You know what? I know what we should do for our intro.
What?
We should be like doing a science experiment. So be like you're in a science class.
Pass the sodium nitrate.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Hey, okay. Welcome everybody to the Stactplex secret laboratory. Brandon, can you pass me the sodium nitrate concentrate formula?
Here you go, sir.
And yes, now you add this to the concoction. Chris, will you bring over the Bunsen burner?
I bring you the Bunsen burner.
Excellent. This experiment is going well. This will be the ultimate concoction to create us a new podcast just out of chemicals.
Can I mix it? Can I mix it?
Now, Brandon, before you mix it, you must add the special ingredient. We must add this special ingredient, and that's a stick of dynamite.
What?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Stacked episode 89.
Holy crap, it worked.
Yep, today we are talking about stupid. So stupid.
That was
So
dumb.
stupid. I'm so sorry, everybody. That you had to
It
listen
was
to
a
that.
good idea. It was a good idea.
It was a
In
good
theory,
idea.
it was a
Oh,
great.
sure.
It was a great idea in theory.
In execution, it was perfect. Couldn't have been better. So stupid. All right, welcome back to Stacked episode 89, everybody. Yeah. All right, catch you guys all next week. What are we
All right,
talking about
I guess
today?
we're good.
We're talking about Brandon. We're talking about you today. We're talking about you and Wednesday. What you doing Wednesday night? Just kidding. We're talking about we're talking about Brandon, what are we talking about? We're talking about experimental movies.
So yeah. So the movie Blonde is coming out. The
No.
movie about Marilyn
No.
Monroe. Yes.
No.
Justin Carver, get out.
No.
Get out. Nobody
No.
I
wants
don't
you here.
feel like it.
No, I don't feel like.
And Blonde has been pitched as a very experimental art house movie, and it got me thinking, what other experimental films are out there? So let's delve into that.
There must
shall
be
we?
more. Surely.
It has to be.
It has to be. Okay.
Do you have any movies about science experiments on here?
No. Wait, maybe. Wait, let me see.
Technically, in a weird way, yes.
Is
Not
Flubber
quite.
on here?
Is Can of Worms on here?
It could be. There's many experiments. Yeah, so we're talking about experimental movies where filmmakers like to experiment with the very fabric the very fabric of cinema itself, manipulating the frame, editing, timing, blocking time and space within the frame. I don't know. Experimental is such a broad topic that we got lots of, I think we're gonna have lots of interesting picks. Chris, what was your sort of criteria of picking out an experimental movie? Because it's such a broad thing.
Yeah. So for me, I wanted to chronologize. Is that the word? I don't know. I wanted to kind of just go through and pick out a little bit of everything across the history of cinema. So I went for something quite old, and then I went for something a little bit more in the middle there, and it's something a little bit more contemporary, because I wanted to kind of show off what kind of experimentation was going on in the world of cinema at the in these different eras, shall I say. So that's really how I went about it. I wanted to have a variety of mediums and styles, and just do something a little bit that covers a little bit of everything, is at least my hope. And yeah, that was my approach. How about you, Brandon?
I wanted to make sure to do films that either experimented with the form, experimented with style and narrative and cinematography, and movies that could be just considered experimental movies, which aren't really narrative features, as you can see eventually.
What?
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I thought about even doing Fanchon the Cricket, because
That's not
that movie
experimental.
had the score was in a very mental
Oh.
physical sense.
For those
Uh,
listening, we
yeah.
watched a movie called Fanchon the Cricket, an old Mary Pickford movie.
Mary Pickford.
And
Yeah.
we this is such a funny day. We're like, oh, okay, we're seeing this newly restored film, and with a new score. And I was thinking, like, it's an old, what is it, 20s, maybe even a 10s film.
Yeah, 1916 or
Yeah.
something.
And we're like, oh, it's gonna have a nice like classical score, because films that I've seen that have been restored with a new score, I'm thinking of like when I think Philip Glass like scored Dracula, the 1931 Dracula, and it was a grand orchestral score to complement that film. I was thinking of something like that, and we go to the screening for film history, and we watch this movie, and it's like, how would you describe the score, guys? Like electric, it's a rock score.
Electric modern rock.
Yeah,
like,
and it's like a movie about what like living in like the German countryside or some shit, And it's got like this really crazy rock, like psychedelic rock score, and
yeah, and like I remember because like the people that like worked on the restoration were in attendance because like they were here to distribute the film and like show it off and be like, hey, like let's spread the word about like our work. And to the credit, good job. But then I remember they asked like, what did you guys think of the score? And of course, we were freshmen at the time and didn't want to be rude. Yeah. So we were all like, oh, like, very creative. Like, I think like that kind of modern sensibility is going to add so much and like really entice like modern viewers to maybe give this a chance. No. That honestly, that probably would come at a detriment.
Yeah.
But there was one guy who was like, I hate it. And we were like, brave.
Oh,
we were like, brave.
Oh, he's probably a senior. Oh yeah, it was awful, and I felt bad because the composer was there who did that score, and he was like, it was all these like film archivist people, and then it was like this just dude just like, yeah, and then I helped out and did the score for the movie, and we're like, oh, alrighty, I see. Anyways, all right, let's get to our experimental films. We're not talking about that film today. Maybe we are. Chris, maybe you picked it. No. We shall see. No. Okay. Let's get to our movies. Once a week, we say our topic or theme and go our separate ways, construct our own 3-film stack. Then after a week, we come back here on the podcast, and share our own stacks, one film at a time. Then at the end of the show, we will mix and match our 9 films to make the ultimate decision what quintessential 3-film stack we are checking out at this hypothetical video store. Apologies if I'm slurring my words and if I'm a little loopy today. Brandon poisoned me a few minutes before the podcast. I was feeling some acid reflux, and he gave me this little witch's potion. And honestly, I feel worse. So thank you, Brandon, for that.
No, I made you. Did the acid reflux gone?
It's gone, but I feel worse. I would rather just have acid reflux right now than whatever I'm feeling right now. Am I gonna turn into a toad?
Acid reflux.
What little brew did you make for me? I'm scared, honestly.
It was an experiment. Haha, we're here.
There we go. Hey, what am I, some sort of guinea pig? What the fuck? Chris, you were up first with your first experimental film. Have at it, buddy.
All right. Well, I'm taking us back to the early days of cinema, long before we even made narratives. I'm taking us to the year 1896.
No.
I am picking George Méliès's The Vanishing Lady.
Oh. I thought you were going to pick Sally Garner the Gallup, but let's talk about this.
No,
we
already...
I thought about that in the sense that, like, I did think about that because I was like, oh, like, experimenting with cinema itself, like the very form of film, the creation of film. But I wanted to specifically go into experimenting for the very first time, less discovering and creating film for the first time, if you will. Mm-hmm. So The Vanishing Lady is a movie. It's a minute and I think 16 seconds long, directed by none other than George Méliès. And it's just The Vanishing Lady. It's literally like a magic show. A woman sits in a chair in the middle of the screen. Méliès himself, I believe, walks out, drapes a cloth over her. There is a cut, and the woman's gone. And that's it. That's literally it. And like, I know that's a weird like choice of film for something you would think we'd put like maybe some narrative thing or something on this, but I wanted to throw this out there because at least like I feel like it's important to acknowledge where like the very initial stages of any form of experimentation in the medium came from. And then, because I mean, I'm sure people listening know, but at the very beginning days of film being a thing, it was only ever used to depict reality. And then slowly and slowly and slowly, they started creating films that maybe had little things like this, just little stories or something like that. Like even if it's just a little illusion or something, and eventually you get to narrative, and then you get to all that, and then go into the future. But I wanted to highlight this one just because it is a pretty foundational piece of what kind of got us started with getting more and more creative with the medium. So yeah, I chose The Vanishing Lady by George Méliès.
Well,
Any thoughts?
I hadn't seen it before you started talking about it, but while you were talking about it, I watched it. And now
It's on Letterboxd. You can log
yeah,
it too.
and I'm gonna
I did
log
the
it.
same thing.
Really?
I just logged it.
Let's all log it. Okay, but
Live
I mean, like
review.
I doubt that there's anything really that you like. I mean, unless you guys do have something really that you want to say, but I feel like largely that I really only wanted to add this because I knew that some like I felt like someone had to acknowledge the early days of cinema, and I figured that would be me because I'm always the one with the outlandishly weird picks, or at least I tend to be. But yeah.
I am glad we're starting here. And I'm glad you picked this, Chris, because like, yeah, it's very fucking experimental. Because before this, it was like cinema verite, where people only used cameras to film things that actually
In real
just
life.
happened. The workers leaving the station, a dude watering his garden. What was the first comedy was like a dude. What was it?
Wasn't it like messing with stepping on a garden hose or something?
it was stepping on a garden hose. It was just like it was literally just like home videos of people just like filming stuff that it was just happening, and nobody was faking it because nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody was like acting or anything. They're just like, oh, okay, just walking. And blokes like George Méliès, he was like, wait, we can use editing to make magic tricks. Colonel Tom Parker would have loved this. Make so much snow out of it. And it's crazy how you start to see the progression of people learning about editing and jump cuts. You see, this movie invented like Dragon Ball teleporting. Because she's teleporting all around the frame of the film, and she gets halved in some points, it's crazy to see people playing with cinema that's like something that's so standard that's like it's like doing cuts like this is like breathing to filmmakers us today, but back then this was crazy. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah.
I think my review says it all. People in 1896, quite impressive. People in 2022, still quite cool.
That's fair. That is totally fair.
But also, I think it is impressive because it is also an experiment in of itself. Where did she go? Just kidding. We know how it was done.
Where did she go?
To this day, we don't know.
To this day, where the fuck did she go? No, but it's really cool. I think I hadn't watched it before, and I just logged it for the first time. Very interesting stuff.
We all did. So if you're listening to this episode, you can go to our letterboxes. You can pinpoint when exactly we record this podcast and the minute. We our first live reaction to something on the podcast, to a film or something.
So we're now a reaction channel. Does that mean we're gonna get like thousands of views?
Thank you so much.
What's up, guys?
Dude, okay, our thumbnail's
Stacked
gotta be us
reacts
like,
to.
like pogging the fucking thing. Oh wait, that was last week's episode. All right, good first pick. I'm gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna follow this train of experimental. I'm not going in chronological order. But I am doing a film from 1993. We all watched this. I was sitting next to you two clowns when we watched this in film analysis. I'm picking a
no.
2-minute film by Stan Brakhage. I'm picking Stellar.
Oh, Stellar! I remember this shit.
Double
Was fire.
stack.
What?
No way! Okay, I had a feeling one of you would pick it. I didn't think both of you would. That's sick.
I've actually been thinking about this movie a lot this week because I recently went to see the new David Bowie documentary, Moon Age Daydream. And out of all the films, it reminded me of that because it is just a total kaleidoscope of sound and image that somehow you're able to make meaning from it, the movie. And I didn't want to pick it because it's really fresh. I know you guys haven't seen it, and I just want to see what everyone else feels about it when it comes out. But I wanted to pick out the movie that I felt like the most was like it, which was Stellar. And Brandon, tell me, what is this movie about?
It's about what you make of it. It's about, I mean, if you look at the way like Stan Brakhage plays with the frame in any one of his experimental movies, he's made many. He utilizes just like whatever happens to be in front of him or the frame itself or little imperfections. And most people will look at a 2-minute clip of basically like flashes and like rippling film or rippling digital technology or just colors and say that is boring, that isn't anything that's meaningful or something like that. But there's a special meaning and fascination to like be seen. It's like a how it's made thing, you know, where you're fascinated to see how film is made, and then the more you stare at something that you don't think means anything, maybe an art piece that's like abstract, you will find some sort of meaning in it for yourself. And I remember sitting through Stellar and like being like, you know, like the world's so big, like meaning like our universe, because it makes you just think about that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily something that the film is putting forward for you. Like it's not obvious, you know, but it's also not pretentious in a way that it's like, it's the grand universe. That's what you come to terms with as a viewer. You know, you have to analyze film and or experimental cinema as you are.
Yeah.
Or as it is. So yeah. I like it.
I just think that Stellar basically encapsulates what cinema is. You know, it's literally just like if some
Moving
extra
frames.
dimensional being who couldn't comprehend cinema like came to our dimension, our planet, and viewed us just staring at the screen with all of these drastic images rapidly flashing at the screen before our eyes, they'd be astonished that we find this not only entertaining but meaningful, you know? And I think Brakhage basically boils it down to its near essentials, where it's literally 2 minutes of silence and just these splashes of colors, like each like taking up like it's like a different color every frame, right, of the film for 2 minutes, and it's probably 30 frames per second, I'd say, you know, and we're just blasted with this color, and we're like, that's it, that's what cinema is, baby, you know. It's highly experimental because he's trying to sort of pin down what this is, you know, and why we find it so insane. And
I mean, an alien would never be able to tell the difference between the two.
yeah, they would never be able to tell the difference between this or fucking E.T.
Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
or Mortal Kombat Annihilation. No, he would clearly be able to tell it. He's like, no, scorpions in that one. He's like, no.
No. Sub-Zero's in
Sub-Zero's
that
in
one.
that one. Chris, what do you think about?
I don't know who that is.
What do you think about Stellar? We all watched it together. We all
Yeah.
held hands while we watched it.
Yeah, I'm looking at my review and I wrote about how like this movie made me wonder why we think the way we do and the strength of our imagination to create meaning all on its own, or largely on its own, shall I say. Yeah, and like I think like this movie is also a really good, I mean, you could say this about any movie, but it's a really interesting like exploration of how meaning is derived from cinema or any art form for that matter. And also, I find it fascinating to think about, that in relation to, and I obsess over this piece of film theory, but interpretation theory, spectator, and all that stuff, and how meaning is derived, whether it's from the piece itself or from your own individuality as a spectator.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, and like Brandon said, like some people are definitely going to look at this and be like, oh, what's this like nonsense, like image, like random colors, whatever. But like, the fact that even one person can look at this and get something out of it means that everybody can. And I find that to be a really interesting thing. And I think that is, in essence, that is the essence of not only cinema, but especially the essence of experimental cinema. So yeah, totally on board with this one.
You can find any meaning in anything,
Yes.
and that even means nothing. So
Yes.
You can finding nothing in nothing is something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And some people will probably watch this and claim it is nothing. But that's something, isn't it?
But that is something. And how does that nothing make you feel?
Yeah, exactly.
That's something.
That's something. That's something we learned a lot in film theory. It was like,
yeah.
you're feeling bored in a film.
God bless you, Professor Fury.
Professor Fury, thank you. If you're feeling bored in a movie, that's still feeling something. That's still a movie making you feel something. So you're still engaging with the movie, Think about that, you fucking dumpster babies. Think about that, huh?
don't insult our
filthy
viewers.
animals.
Don't. What if
Dumpster baby's not a bad thing. Could be.
I find it to be a slur.
What? Oh, okay. I'm cutting that out then. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
No,
I'm not cutting it out. Okay, Chris, let's go into round 2 since we both picked Stellar. What's your next film?
All right, I'm gonna go with my most, shall I say, quote unquote, basic one. I'm picking Maya Deren and Alexander Hamid's 1943 experimental short film, Meshes of the Afternoon.
Ooh, yeah, good pick.
Yeah.
Pick.
This is kind of your bread and butter when it comes to experimental films. This is the first one they'll show you. If you ask a film professor about experimental films. Okay, so this movie is about a woman returning home and falls asleep and has vivid dreams that may or may not be happening in reality, and that's up for you to decide. It is a weirdly haunting piece, but also kind of beautiful in a weird way. There's this what's the word? There's kind of manifested figure of enshrouded in darkness, but its face is a mirror once it's revealed. And there's something about the way this film is handled on top of its very eerie score that makes it a very visceral experience to watch, just because so much of it is so it really seeps under your skin. You know what I mean? And especially if you're not, if you don't consume experimental cinema or any kind of experimental arts regularly, this can definitely be a very good entry point, but also nonetheless still a very destabilizing one, because it does forego a lot of the shall I say, conventions of traditional cinema, as experimental films do. Yeah, I remember we watched this. Was this in film history or aesthetics?
I feel like it was on aesthetics.
Yeah,
Aesthetics.
So yeah,
We did a triple feature in that class, I think, that day.
I think so.
It
I think it
was
was two
Trouble-
experimental films, and then was it
Duck 'em up.
Trouble in Paradise.
Diving Bell and Butterfly? Was that
Was it
also
that?
was that with this one?
Oh,
Because
I
that
don't
was
know.
also kind of experimental.
Somebody go to their letterbox. Chris, I had the letterbox the earliest. You know what?
I didn't have it at the time.
I did. Hold on.
But yeah. So Meshes of the Afternoon. It is it's your bread and butter experimental film. Would recommend if you just need to if you want to just dive in and just check it out. Yeah.
What the hell?
Simple as that. You guys have any thoughts on Meshes of the Afternoon? Any takeaways from it?
So we
I
watched.
think it's a cool little movie.
Sorry, before you say, can we watch this with Duck Amuck and Persepolis?
Yes, I knew that was.
Oh, Persepolis. Right.
Why did
What
we?
was the-
What's the connection? I don't
Wait.
even remember.
I mean, I
I
like
mean,
Persepolis,
I connect.
but-
I connect.
I like
Duck Amuck and
yeah.
Persepolis because it's like animation, but
Yeah.
Hmm.
But then, but Duck Amuck and Meshes are both kind of experimental cinema,
yeah.
if you think about it.
Guess so.
Yeah.
Anyways, continue, Brandon.
I think it's a interesting little movie. I remember everybody came out and they were like, "What was that one in the middle?" Or like the first one we watched, because everybody was like, "Persepolis is like this normal animated movie, and Duck Amuck's like a cartoon, like a Looney Tunes cartoon." So everybody was like, "Yeah, that's cool." But I think it was really interesting just to see, like, I mean, as far as the narrative goes, it's not much, but once you get the feeling that it's an experimental form of cinema and it's kind of like dreaming or waking dreams, that's kind of what cinema is. So it kind of does feel quintessential in that sense to being and it's a short film, and it's a little longer than Stellar and The Vanishing Lady, which are like short encapsulations of what cinema could be. Versus this feels like a first proper short film, because it wasn't like everybody had cameras back in the day and were making their own independent pieces of cinema,
Right. Apparently I hated this movie. I gave it half a star. I don't remember why. Guess I really hated
Like,
it.
like,
I
it
mean,
makes
we were fresh.
goddamn-
Keep in mind, this is a pre-Gummo era.
What the hell does this mean? Half a star. I was such a dumbass in freshman year. God damn.
I know.
Yeah, you were.
All right, I think we're gonna end this episode early.
Please don't.
Play no. Yeah. I don't remember much of this film, but I remember the mirror creature really scared me. I remember that was a pretty haunting image. Has to do a lot with I'm guessing I'm interpreting the mirror as like some sort of the demons of self-esteem and looking at yourself in the future. I don't know. I don't really remember most of this film, if I'm going to be honest. I didn't write anything about it. I just went half a star. Move on. That's back when I didn't write reviews for things every time I watched something. So, look at me. I'm the fool. All right, Chris, you made me look like a fool. Are you happy now? All right, cool. Satisfied? All right, he's doing the Fortnite dance.
I'm satisfied.
Yeah, of course you're satisfied. You poisoned me. I won't forget this day, the day you poisoned me. I'm going to poison you back.
The same day as the Queen.
Same day as the Queen's funeral. Anybody watch that, by the way? No? Good.
No.
Okay.
No,
No, we're good.
nah,
All right.
we're good.
My next film. We're gonna start stepping into actual feature films here.
Same.
Okay. I'm doing one of our favorite experimental surrealist directors here. One of the most popular ones out there, David Lynch. Talking about Eraserhead.
David.
Talking about Eraserhead.
Hey,
and how
that's also quintessential.
Yeah, quintessential, experimental. I think one of the biggest subgenres of experimental genre is experimental horror. I would classify this film as a horror film. It is not a traditional horror film. Brand's rolling his eyes like the smug bastard he is. What a smug bastard. Look at you. Oh, sure. But this movie personifies, not personifies, it sort of puts an image to the paranoia and anxiety and fear of fatherhood, which is a really cool and interesting take that Lynch uses to construct using sound and image here. There's no real concrete plot to Eraserhead. You're just some bloke with hair like mine, albeit styled up a bit more. The hairspray set in. He gets a baby that he has to take care of, and this baby kind of looks like when Brandon eats too much Jack in the Box and he's laying on the couch watching Best Picture nominees that nobody's heard of, wrapped in a little blanket. That's what he kind of looks like.
That's good. I like it. But it's not true.
But it's not true. But it's not true, by the way, for those listening. No, it looks like a little lizard man. Not like Brandon. A little lizard man wrapped in like little diaper. I don't know.
Little teeth.
It's an eerie movie. There's sort of this low frequency like eeriness too, like that overlaps the film in terms of sound. It's black and white, very desolate. You don't know where this film takes place. It's very groggy and gross, and you know, nothing is really real in this movie, but nothing is really not real. And again, it's sort of just Lynch playing with the concept of sound and image to produce this great fear he had, because he was becoming a father when he made this movie. And he wanted to use this as an experiment to see if he could translate his feelings into a feature-length film. And I think he did it pretty well. I'm a fan of Eraserhead. I'm a fan. What do you think, Brandon? You've been rolling your eyes. You've been cringing. You've been scrunging. You've been going, this whole time I've been talking. What do you think?
Today is Friday.
And
I
if you
am
believe
David
it,
Lynch.
it is Friday once again.
My daily weather report. No, David Lynch. I'm not a David Lynch head, as they say. Frankly, I haven't seen Blue Velvet yet.
Quite frankly,
Quite frankly, I like Mulholland Drive. Eraserhead is a good movie. Like, there are movies I like. I don't love his movies. I like that he's different and he's got a very unique voice and style to his films. Like, they are enigmatic of like any sort of like traditional narrative structure or style. And I think that's very brave and bold, with the exception of his Dune film that he made, which is very cookie cutter, except for its effects.
I don't know. I wouldn't say
of...
the whispering monologues that are overlaid throughout the film is very cookie cutter.
I'm talking about the narrative itself. It's a traditional hero's journey.
Spice. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but I think Eraserhead is a good movie. I enjoy it as much as one could enjoy an experimental film, but I don't love it. I just find it to be like a very interesting watch in terms of like, it's another film that I equate to somebody's dream or a nightmare. You know, a lot of these experimental films are, because they feel more like feelings than they feel like narratives.
I like it because there's not a scene in this movie where I am being voted off a plane because of the how good my story is.
Good dream.
No, very good dream. Chris, have you seen Eraserhead?
Yeah, not since I was in high school.
Oh, what do you think?
Yeah, I like Lynch. I think for me, like, Lynch is a filmmaker I respect more than I like.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that there are people out like in the world out there that make films like he does, and people who like those kinds of films. But if I'm being completely honest to God, like, it's not quite my style. Experimental films are a little tricky for me at times. But I have liked a lot of his work. My favorite of his was I would probably say my favorite is The Elephant Man.
Oh yeah.
Of his, but
I've not seen it.
But yeah, like Eraserhead's great too, as far as I remember at least. But remember, you're hearing high school Chris impressions of this movie. Yeah, I don't know. I think at the time that, I'm not gonna lie, this might have been one of the first black and white films I ever saw. But yeah, it's interesting. I think it's one of those movies that, like, you're either gonna hop right on board with it, or you're gonna get lost in the dust as soon as you turn it on. Yeah, I'm sure it's good. If I revisit it, I bet I'll like it more. But for the moment, I'm kind of like, yeah, good. Like, it's a movie that I seek out more for studying reasons, less for enjoying cinema reasons, if you know what I mean.
Fair, yeah. That's the thing about experimental films that we're talking about today. You know, it's like I feel like out of any other type of filmmaking, this is fairly the most subjective. You know, because it is just artists just trying, and if you like it, then you like it. Even though you don't, you know.
It's like a cosmic gumbo.
If you, it sort of is if you think about it like that. Good point. Good point. All right, Brandon, what's your next cosmic gumbo?
I'm gonna do another modern auteur, another modern experimental film director. I'm going with 2009's Gaspar Noé's film Enter the Void.
Oh.
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 So Anybody who knows Gaspar Noé knows that he is very big at experimenting with the styles of cinema and narratives and what they can mean. And this film isn't a film that I necessarily love, but I really like it. I think it's a very interesting portrayal of life after death. Basically, the film follows the protagonist. So for the first like 10 minutes, roughly, it's like a near 3-hour movie. The protagonist is walking around and you see his life in first person. So you see it through his eyes. And he does this really weird thing with blinking and like with him walking around. That's kind of like the horror video game aesthetic that we talked about the other day with Barbarian on our surprise movie Stacked. And then, yeah, spoilers for an episode of Stacked. The loyal Stackies won't be upset. When it comes to what the turning point in the movie is when the main character, the protagonist, is shot. And he experiences like an out-of-body experience as his body is dying and his soul is like ascending. So Noé moves from scene to scene, showing the audience like the life flashing before somebody's eyes. So you're seeing, well, their life as it happened, but also like experiencing it non-linearly, because he's like playing with the concept of human perception and what happens when somebody really dies, which is really interesting and experimental for cinema to do. Not only placing it in first person, but then bringing you outside of that to a third person experience. And it makes it so that film feels like a 4 or 5 dimensional plane instead of 2 or 3. And I think it's really interesting. Now, do I think it's a very moving piece of cinema? Not really. Noé's films have never really like hooked their emotional pathos into me. I think they've kind of struggled to do that because they're very cold. But I think in terms of like how this film is like made and moves from scene to scene, it's so unique and it's so crazy. And we love him for that, don't we, folks?
And quite frankly, we love him for that one. He made a film where, you don't know what you're gonna get, and that's what you get. I haven't seen a single Gaspar Noé film, and I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass over it. I wanted to see Vortex. Now that sounds like a really experimental film. It's the Nintendo DS of movies. You know what I'm saying? Kind of cool.
They kind of did that today with the Whodunit I saw.
Oh, really?
And they do that and they also do that in 500 Days of Summer.
Oh, well, spoilers for 2 movies I haven't seen. Thanks, Brandon.
Of course.
We talked about Irreversible when Sellers was on the podcast with us. That sounds like a pretty insane movie. This one sounds insane too. I've just been waiting for my DMT dealer to get back to me before I watch this movie. But maybe I don't need him to watch this movie. Maybe I can just watch the movie and that's just enough of an experience. I don't take DMT, guys. Those is a joke.
Stop Stack does not endorse
Why do you keep
illegal substances.
Why do you keep doing that? Why do you keep lying?
Actually, it's not illegal anymore, but
it's not illegal. Well, wait, it's not.
Well,
in Oregon.
Well, didn't it in Oregon?
In Oregon, Oregon listeners, maybe I was being serious, but anywhere else, I wasn't.
Hey, not on the podcast. Not on the podcast.
Don't cry.
Yeah, sounds pretty fucking insane.
Wait, what?
I like movies where it's life after death.
I like movies.
I like totals. No, I like movies where it's life after death. Those ones really, really shake my core. Brandon wasn't a fan of Waking Life.
I thought it would.
But that scared 7-year-old Ethan till eternity, and what made him a nihilist. And maybe this movie will spark something else in him, and I want to see it. Chris, what do you think?
So I have not seen a single Gaspar Noé film either. Funnily enough, actually, it's actually kind of funny that we decided to do this stack for this week because I am actually filming my first film for grad school on Thursday, and our focus is experimental films. I actually watched a clip from Enter the Void earlier this morning for class. Yeah, this is cool.
How serendipitous.
how truly fucking serendipitous. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little scared of Gaspar Noé just because
You should
his
be.
movies seem a little not on top of being out there. Like the guy just looks a little scary. Um, but I don't, I'm like I've heard a couple of things about what his movies are like and what they're about, and it's an intimidating thing to jump into, but I can't lie that I am a little intrigued and I'm curious to see what's in there.
He's an intense fella. I gotta
He
say.
definitely seems like it. But yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm interested, and that's all. That's all she wrote.
And that's all she wrote. That's all you can really say, and that really wraps it up for the second round, not for the episode. Let's get into the final round here. Chris, what is your last experimental film? Are you gonna give us a real doozy this time? What do you have in store for us?
Not the world's biggest doozy.
Okay.
I am picking another short. All of my films this week are short films. This is a film directed and I believe animated by John R. Dilworth, the creator of Courage the Cowardly Dog.
What?
Ooh.
Oh, Muriel. Oh,
this
foreskin.
This film is Life in Transition. It's an experimental piece directed and animated by the guy himself. It's actually a semi-autobiographical film, and it chronicles a turning point in the life of an artist through Dilworth's iconic surrealist style. If you want to see this movie, it is available for free on YouTube. Would definitely recommend it. It's actually a pretty interesting piece because you kind of like see the genesis of a creature come to form and watch their life like kind of come into fruition and fade from existence. It's a weirdly beautiful but also haunting film. Yeah, there's something about it that's just, and it has that kind of like almost I don't know what word to use, but like surrealist, like decrepit kind of look that Dilworth is known with his animated works. Yeah, it's a not much else to say beyond that. It's a very well made, like short, pretty much made by one person only. I wrote about in my review about how it reminds me of like, sorry, I have to keep swallowing. Jesus. It reminds me of the cyclicity of life and existence in all of its horror and its beauty. And I think that is something that was nailed really well in this. Yeah, would highly recommend it for anyone who hasn't seen it. I don't think either of you have seen this, but it's only 4 minutes, so if I keep talking for a couple of minutes, maybe you can watch it. But yeah. Anyway, Life in Transition.
I skipped through it. I didn't watch it because 4 minutes. But it is wow. Dilworth knows how to create scary fucking images, you know.
Oh yeah.
And it is quite an interpretation of the cycle of life, and the cycle of life of just sort of like things being created from other things, you know, the transfer of matter, you know, and he sort of shows that in a very freaky and scary way, you know, of creatures being born, dying, turning into other things, turning into crazy things, those things dying, you know. Isn't it crazy that like what do you think is going to happen to your cells once you die? You know, reincarnation is technically true because that matter and that stuff's going to go somewhere else, you know? It's going to the ground.
Because matter can't be destroyed.
Yeah, that might go into like a plant, and then that might become matter for worms, and then that worm may become part of a bird, and then the bird will become another worm, and then that bird might become chicken, and then you might eat chicken, and then those cells might go into a person, then you might become another person. Holy shit. And then you might die again and become another worm, you know? It's just like, it's crazy to think about on that level. Sure, you can have your own theories for afterlife on a spiritual level, but if you're talking literally about the body, I think that's what Dilworth is really going for here, you know? And the way his sort of characters and shapes change throughout this 4-minute film. It's cool. It's cool. What do you think, Brandon?
He looks like Krusty the Clown without makeup.
Yeah, he does.
I don't
Is that-
know. It
is
sounds
that all?
interesting. I haven't watched it, so I haven't scrubbed through it, but I've looked at images. Looks kind of crazy, like a flash animated sort of thing.
Yeah, I think a big part of the reason I wanted to choose this film in accompaniment to the previous two picks is that like with my first film with Vanishing Lady, like I wanted to do like early cinema. Messenger of the Afternoon is kind of 1943, so something in the middle and like live action stuff. And in Life in Transition, I wanted to throw in something that's a little bit more contemporary, but also because it's animated and like animation's part of film. Uh, Different mediums, but same artistry basically. I mean, different artistry, but under the same kind of belt. You know what I mean? Um, yeah. So my last pick is Life in Transition by John R. Dilworth.
Very nice. What
I
you
love
have
that.
quite a crazy stack. I love it.
Heck yeah!
I love it. All right, let's get into my last film. I'm gonna sort of be talking about, life cycles and everything. I'm gonna go from another very experimental and profound director, Terrence Malick. I'm talking about The Tree of Life, 2011.
Tree of Life.
Um,
We also talked about this in today in class.
oh really? Well, there you go.
We covered all the bases.
Tree of Life is basically it is hard to encapsulate what this film is about, but it is just about what it means to be alive when thinking about death, what came before, what happened, and what will happen. Terrence Malick very much depicts a very religious experience about the world, the cosmos, and time, I would say, where, oh man, some of the best like experimental films are honestly like hard to grapple with, and I still have a hard time grappling with this one. I probably watched it like a couple months ago, but it just has some fantastic imagery, of like, first of all, you get to see the whole history of the world in this movie, all lead up to the story of this small family in Texas, and sort of it's this vast story about the history of our world, and then just gets sucked up into this really interpersonal story about a father and his relationship between his sons, and then it goes on to that, and it's sort of, Malick is able, through editing composition between these sublime images and this really intimate story, is able to connect how the human experience is just as important as like life itself. I don't know, that's how I interpret it. Brandon, have you seen this film, Tree of Life? Silence.
I have.
What do you
Sorry.
make of it? What do you make
Sorry,
of it?
my fan's on. I have.
It's okay. Oh,
And I don't know. I'm mixed on it because I don't really find the stuff compelling about the family, to be honest. Like, if I look at that story in the movie, I'm like, granted, I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember watching it and being like, I don't really care, But then when it came to the stuff relating to the halfway point of the movie, where it just for 20 to 30 minutes becomes like this evolution of life, that amazing montage, I was like in awe of it, like the beautiful cinematography, and it made me feel it made me feel, Lubezki's cinematography made me feel insignificant.
yeah.
And I guess that's what he was trying to do, because he was like, the family's life is so small and insignificant, but it means so much. So maybe that's why rewatching it would probably be better for me. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the movie, but I respect it most definitely. I love Malik, so you know how I feel about Days of Heaven and um, Hidden Life. So
Hidden Life, so good. Chris, have you seen this?
No, I have not. I feel like I've studied this movie, but I have not even seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is I mean, like, okay, so from what I know, Chivo knocks it out of the fucking park. This earned him one of his 3 consecutive wins at the Oscar, which is unheard of for a cinematographer.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I cannot believe he won 3 years in a row. And yeah, he and the film, like you said, Ethan, like tells the story of this family and this like the interpersonal relationship between a father and his sons, but also weirdly like is also the genesis of the entire existence of life.
Yeah.
The like we talked about in my my class earlier today about how the filmmakers outsourced that whole segment to a like a one person animation team to like weave to get to create kind of like the animations that went into like that middle segment. I believe in the film it's in the middle somewhere. And yeah, I've heard it's absolutely breathtaking. And yeah, I think this is definitely a special film, maybe not one that will gel with everyone considering like such a grand scope, but also such an intimate story all at the same time. So it might be a little alienating. I can see that. But nonetheless, still a very interesting concept and definitely suitable for an experimental, edge to take it in that direction. So yeah.
Yeah. All right, Brandon, wrap us up. What's your last experimental film?
my last film is a 1970s film from another surrealist legend. It probably has the most narrative out of any film we've talked about today. I'm picking The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie by Luis Buñuel.
Whoa.
Okay.
I've never heard of this movie. Tell us about it.
It's good. So it's an experimental form of storytelling, an experimental form of narrative and style. Because when you look at a filmmaker like Luis Buñuel, the dude is known for not making necessarily the most not linear storylines or most normal per se. Because I've talked about one of his films on the show past. Yeah, it was called The Exterminating Angel.
Yeah.
Which is essentially about a bunch of people who are stuck in a room and they can't leave for unknown reasons. And you think maybe it could be supernatural, but it's literally a social construct. And it's operating as like a dissection of class between the rich and the poor, because the poor are able to get in and out of the house, but the rich are not able to leave. And so they must like survive. But in this film, it's also a satiric examination of class. But instead, it's about these 6 friends who constantly try to sit down to dinner, but never can eat because they are continually interrupted by people or events or just strange things happening within the events of the cinema. So there really is no particular narrative here that Buñuel is doing, but he puts together these very interesting conversations and almost like a Linklater movie, but those are constantly interrupted by comedic hijinks, either by the actors or the characters in the film. Like they try to they interrupt it, or there are just like extra things happening beyond them that get in the way. And it's super funny. It's super engaging and interesting. And from a class perspective, it can be examined also in a very interesting way. I really like this movie. I think it's really funny. It's experimental in cinematic form, and it's got more narrative than the rest, even if it's not like always like trying to push the bounds of what cinema is. It kind of is in a sense. It feels like a French New Wave film in that sense. But yeah. What is
I
that?
think Luke agrees.
Yeah, sorry. My roommate. I have roommates.
Brandon, I don't think I've ever been more sold on a movie than just now. I'm going to be completely honest. That sounds incredible, and it sounds right up my alley. This sounds like a Muppet Show sketch, but like a feature-length film. Mm-hmm. And I said I knew nothing about the movie, but I now looked it up on Letterboxd. I've seen this poster like 1,000 times on Letterboxd. The lips with the legs and the bowler hat.
Yeah.
Now I can finally put a movie to the poster, which is cool, and I'm dying to see it. That sounds really funny.
It is good.
And that sounds like something I would make, honestly. Just like
it is. It's smart and stupid.
Friends having dinner, yeah, and just being this incredibly stupid stuff preventing them from having dinner. Damn, I want to see. I really want to see this movie bad now. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really jazzed about it. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting concept, especially for like an experimental film. Just because like it's so, I don't know. I feel like this, like the logline all on its own, you can take this in so many genres and so many tones. And I like the idea that they ran with this in an experimental way. And like, yeah, it says like in this letterbox thing, it says events both actual and imagined, which I think experimental films especially are very, very good at blurring the distinction between reality and fiction. And yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that can work really well. Have not seen this movie. Haven't even heard of it until you said it. But sold.
Yeah.
Oh.
You guys got to watch more Buñuel. The dude's kind of a wild man. He does, like, every one of his movies is kind of like playing with human perception and subjectivity in a way. And I'm not just saying that to get Ethan's goat. But
say the word subjectivity, Ethan.
Yeah, but like, but like, it is because they're done with like imaginary like sort of things and playing with audience expectation. You know, he also breaks the fourth wall a few times in a way that is very interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I hope you guys enjoy when you watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I haven't watched the right Buñuel films. I've seen Chien Andalou, his earlier stuff, you know, L'Âge d'Or, and then Los Olvidados, which I feel like is not much like his other stuff.
No,
but I know you always praise him enough, you know, with Exterminating Angel and this one, that I gotta see his more, you know, more narrative features. I would say, you know, sounds pretty good. Pretty good.
It's like a good mix between like experimental and narrative, which are the most entertaining experimental films in my opinion. But that's just me.
Well, hell yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Those are our movies, everybody.
Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make this podcast experimental, you know.
Oh.
Would anybody listen to nothing?
Luke does not agree.
All right, let's hear our movies. Chris, go on for 3 films.
All right, my films were The Vanishing Lady, Meshes of the Afternoon, and Life in Transition.
Money. Mine are Stellar, Eraserhead, and The Tree of Life. Brandon, how experimental are you going to get with sharing these 3 films?
Mine were Enter Discreet Stellar, The Charm of the Void Bourgeoisie.
Cool. Yeah, cool. All right, so we know Stellar's on it because that was a double stack. That was kind of surprising.
Yes.
Incredible. What are we thinking, fellas? Anyone single one stands out to you? I feel like we gotta have a classic in there, and I think Meshes, pretty classic. I'd say.
I agree.
Meshes or Vanishing Lady, honestly.
Shortest stack ever.
I would say Vanishing Lady because that's just like that's the beginning, man. You know.
That's the first experiment, you know. Well, first experimental.
One of the first
moment in film.
Yeah.
One of the first.
Besides,
it's a little hard to track.
It's one of the first experimental moments outside of creating the film itself. You know.
I'm okay with either of those. I don't really have a preference.
I would say we go a bit crazier after that. Maybe go into a full feature length. You know, these are sort of like the appetizers.
Before the
honestly, I'm sold on Bourgeoisie. I would want to see. I
Me
want to
too.
watch the
I'm pretty
fuck
sold
out of
on
that
that.
movie. You know,
It's
this is a
good.
movie
Yeah,
about
it's-
recommending movies, and I think Brand recommended this movie better than any other movie we talked about on this stack. It sounds gonzo,
Yeah.
and I
It's
want to
gonzo.
watch it. I
Okay.
really want to watch it.
I'm cool with Meshes or Vanishing Lady being on the list. I don't know which. Meshes just seems like it's like the perfect middle ground. I think we go shortest to longest, or we give them a taste of what experimental cinema's like with Meshes, like we got,
Uh-huh.
and then we dip them into the feature, and at the end they come out with Stellar, and they're like, "Wow, this movie,
I-
man."
Yeah, I definitely think Stellar should end it. I think that would be cool. Have the feature in between the two.
Mhm.
That's true. Let's. Do
Well,
we want to
dessert.
get more? Do we want to get more? Though I feel like we've already tapped into. I don't know. Do we want to be a bit more outsider definition with experimental with Vanishing Lady, or do we want to fit into more traditional experimental sounds like an oxymoron, but you guys know what I mean.
I think we got to give Chris the choice here. Chris has both of
The
these
choice
films
is yours at Chuckarama, Chris.
Okay. So basically it's a choice between we go with like one of the most like iconic pieces of experimental film history ever, or one of the first pieces of experimental film ever.
What do we think is more important? Ed,
So are we trying to go for history or are we trying to go for
narrative
fuck,
convention.
they're both like historically
Well,
significant.
one is narrative conventions are being shattered because it's like a dream, and the other is like playing with the idea of editing and cutting within the frame and making an invisible cut, essentially.
Brandon, you're the one who's seen all of these. What do you think would make a better thematic transition
To just create charm of the
to the
bourgeoisie.
discreet charm of the bourgeoisie?
Meshes of the afternoon.
Probably meshes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know what? Yeah, I say meshes.
All right, let's do it. Let's fucking do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty, so this is Stack's official experimental film stack recommendation 3-film marathon, 2 short films, 1 feature length. Starting with Chris, you want to kick off the stack for us?
Yep. Our first film is Meshes of the Afternoon, directed by Maya Deren and Alexander Hamid from 1943. A very haunting film about a woman returning home and the lines being blurred between fiction and reality all around her. A foundational piece of experimental cinema in the entire history of film. Yeah, good bread and butter piece of experimental film. Go check it out.
There you go. Brandon, what's our number 2?
Our next film is The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, an experimental narrative form and structural film that examines the difficulties of trying to get together in a aristocratic area and household. The upper class fails to eat dinner, but it's funny, it's great, and I hope you enjoy it.
I hope I enjoy it too. And our last film is Stellar by Stan Brakhage. A film that breaks down what cinema really is. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Why are we watching all these fucking images being splattered into our face at 30 or 60 frames per second, you know? What's wrong with us? But it's cool, and we like it. And this is an experimental director trying to get right down to the he is stripping it cinema all of its pins and whistles and just getting down to the bare bones of what the moving image really is. And with that, I think we should conclude this episode of Stacked by following in Stan Brackage's path by breaking down what the podcast really is, which is just a sequence of us flexing our vocal cords. So let's, in the honor of Stan Brakhage, let's do the same.
Papaya. Good luck trying to find any of these in a video store, you idiots.
Jamaica.